I was telling Neela backstage to look at Nina's shoes.
Always good for the shoes.
So Neela, welcome to your first Fortune Most Powerful Women's Summit.
Thank you. Delighted to be here.
It's wonderful to have you. And we were standing backstage, so we couldn't see how many hands went up. So how many of you actually shop at, I shouldn't say actually, but shop at Crate and Barrel?
Oh, excellent.
Good. Most of the room. Excellent. It's one of my go-to stores, although I live in 900 square feet in New York City, so I can't buy a lot at your stores. So Neela, Neela has a very interesting background. I sort of think of Crate and Barrel now as a sort of all American or North American brand, but your background is so international. Just give us a very quick run through of the various places you've lived and worked.
Sure. So I'm British Indian. I grew up in the UK, in north of Manchester, and my parents are Indian. And I studied in the UK, and then I went to work briefly in New York in advertising. My first job actually was as a political speechwriter, which didn't last long. And then I moved back to Europe to study for my MBA in France and Singapore. And then I joined Tesco, which is, for those of you who know it, a very large UK retailer. And I spent 12 years with them and worked in various different markets, as is often the case with these large multinational companies. Spent 3.5 years in Malaysia, worked in South Korea for a little while. I then came back to the UK with a husband and 2 children from Malaysia, and then finally left Tesco and went to work for a privately held German company, very large and family owned. And I didn't really know that those kind of companies existed at that time because I'd always worked in a public company. And I met the founder, billionaire Michael Otto, and was so impressed with his purpose-led leadership of a private company that I was enticed to go and sit on his board, not realizing that I was the first woman, the first non-German, and about 20 years younger than everyone else on that board. So shame on me for my due diligence. But part of their companies that they own is Crate and Barrel. And so I was the chairwoman of Crate and Barrel for a couple of years, and then 2 years ago, I decided to come and be the CEO and get back into an operational role and move to Chicago.
So when you replaced a CEO who was maybe didn't have quite the right vision, and when you took over for him, when you succeeded, what was your charge? What was your mission? What did you want to do?
Well, one thing about Crate and Barrel is that it's a much-loved brand, and whenever you say to people, you work for Crate and Barrel, they go, oh, I love Crate and Barrel, and then you'll say, well, when did you last shop there? And then you'll, oh, well, and there's a lot of umming and ahhing, and so somewhere along the way, the relevance and the sense of urgency and the sense of discovery that comes with being a relevant brand in people's mind, as opposed to something that, I love, but I'm not actively engaged with. So my whole kind of mission, if you like, has been about brand relevance. Mm-hmm. We don't need to be loved. I think we actually are quite loved, and that's a great place to be as a brand because many companies, that's their priority. Ours is about relevance and about reimagining our amazing stores to do something different. So for example, today, 45% of our sales are online. And the reality is that we have to rethink and reimagine what our stores are there to do. And so a lot of my energy has gone into reimagining the stores, thinking about the next generation of service and how do our associates connect. And I could go on, but I guess you only have 15.
So we were just talking to Indra Nooyi, who you'll hear from later, who was telling us that when she became CEO of PepsiCo in 2006, she did this report. She said it was the first very important thing she did, this report on megatrends. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the megatrends in your industry is that young people do not want to own a home, do not want to own a car, and do not really want to own furniture. Is this correct?
I wouldn't say it's a mega trend. I'd say there's a very specific set of customers in urban locations that don't want the hassle factor. And in those situations, we have to think about how do we engage with furniture rental models? And we are doing at the moment. We have an interesting partnership with a startup called Furnish, where you can rent Crate and Barrel furniture in certain cities around the world. And that's a great around the country, sorry. And that's a great way for those audiences to engage with our brand. I think what brands like us have to recognize is we don't get to control the experience the way we once did. You know, in the past, it was relatively straightforward. You came to my store, I gave you great service and great product, and you were my loyal customer, and that was kind of the relationship. Now, there are so many different ways that you interact with my brand. And I have to be there for you in the way that you want to be there. So whether you have a need to rent because you just can't commit to that sectional sofa that I would love you to buy, Pattie, you know, I have to have something for you, but I also have to be there for you if you just want to come and have a meal in our new restaurant, or you want to, you know, engage with me on social media or on Instagram.
So when you took over as CEO, the sort of way of the Crate and Barrel way of marketing was these. It was not Instagram, was it?
Catalogs.
It was a catalog that we got in the mail.
Yes.
I throw in my apartment building in the chute. Still get that big thing from Restoration Hardware.
Okay.
Throw
that one away.
But anyway, you did a big sort of transformation there. Talk about how you're using technology, whether it's Instagram or AI or AR, to transform the experience.
Yeah. I mean, the great thing about this is we have 26 million visitors to our store every year. We have, I think, over 100 million interactions online every year. So I have so many more opportunities to talk to my customers about what we stand for, our product, et cetera. But of course, what we had to think about is where are we going to spend our very expensive marketing dollars? How are we going to transform those into digital marketing and build capabilities in there? But also, you know, pull away from more traditional media like TV or catalogs and invest in Instagram or some of those other channels or search marketing. And I, for one, as the CEO, am very engaged in that transition because I think it's critical to how our customers see us. So, you know, I visited stores today in Toronto, as I should, but I am just as engaged in looking at how we look today on Instagram and what stories we posted.
Sure. Who has a question or a comment? Yes, right here, my three.
So I wanted to ask.
Wait for the mic.
And there it is. It's a simple question. You're from the UK. I struggle to shop for home goods in the UK. Why are you not in the UK or in Europe?
So the founder of Crate and Barrel back in 2000, you know, sold to a German parent company, which is the Otto Group that I work for today. And at the time was very convinced that we still had so much opportunity in the US market that we were not going to pursue international expansion, that it would be a kind of expensive distraction. I wouldn't say I necessarily agree with that point of view, but the reality is now that market is much more competitive than it was today, and your strategy there would be have to be multi-channel. You'd have to go, in my view, online first. Just to be clear, 45% of our sales today are online. So for us, there is no bricks and mortar strategy without online. And we just see that as a very crowded market. The UK is super competitive, and when rents come down, we'll reconsider.
Yes, right here in the middle.
Hello, my name is Ananya.
Please identify yourself.
Yes, Ananya Chada. I was wondering, what's been your happiest moment?
Wow.
Just in life generally, or at Crate and Barrel?
Both.
Both. Well, I mean, it's kind of a boring answer, but, the birth of my 2 children, whilst not at the very moment, I wasn't that happy, but, like, I was in kind of a lot of pain, but, the days subsequently, obviously, was one of my happiest moments. But, I mean, it's actually a very interesting question. So I talk to my team all the time. I love this quote from Roald Dahl about, remember to watch the world around you with glittering eyes. And I talk to my team often about, where are your glittering eyes? Have you looked at the potential of this situation? Can you see, beyond the obstacles that are right in front of you? And it's something I find a lot of I run a mainly female-led company, and I find especially some of my team resoundingly practical. They're always so practical about pointing out to me all the points of potential failure, and I'm like, I get it, but sometimes you do have to have your glittering eyes. And so one of my best moments, for example, was when we celebrated She Makes Us Crate. We celebrated all the women right through from our studio, where we have woodworkers, through to our vendors and artists, all the way through our company globally, to celebrate the contribution that women have made to making Crate and Barrel.
And it's a great site. Look it up. It's on the Crate and Barrel corporate website. Yes, Irene.
Hi, Irene Britt. One of my homes actually is mostly Crate and Barrel, and it was relatively recent, so there we go.
Yay.
My question for you is, as you continue to build your brand, how do you keep that engagement up when you're up against the great aggregators of the world like Amazon? So, I mean, I get it for the big furnish a room thing, but when you're looking for the little add-ons. I mean, can you really, really connect on the Crate and Barrel brand anymore when people will just go to a big search aggregator?
Sure. And it's something we talk about all the time, which is that the world is increasingly gravitating to platforms, and they have a massive advantage around traffic. But my very strong position on that, maybe it comes back to the glittering eyes, is that there's no way you can out-Amazon or any platform. So what you have to do as a brand is be able to tell your story and choose to compete in product categories where you can develop something unique. So, my placemats are made in a Kerala village with a unique technique, a weaving technique that has been preserved for 20 years. You can get a cheaper placemat in the market, and you will be able to find one on our friends at Amazon or Walmart or any platform. But I have to be able to tell you the story of why you should come and buy mine for $6.99, so you pay a $2 premium for that. And you're doing some good in the world, and we're also helping to preserve something that I think is important.
So I think it's around, around 95% of Crate and Barrel's merchandise is unique to Crate and Barrel. Are you saying that you will never, ever sell on Amazon?
I don't see... Hard to be as definitive as that, but as much as I can see it, I can't see a reason why we would right now.
Preserving the story, very interesting. Yes.
Hi, I'm Carol Deacon. I work in automotive retail, which is like home goods, quite a traditional retail model. As you think about how you've moved investment into more, I would say, experiential or social media-based influencers, or where you test out new things, how do you balance the investment in these new areas while keeping kind of the bread and butter going and where you've had strong returns up till now?
Yeah, very good question. And always the tension when you're trying to manage legacy teams, legacy budgets, legacy skill sets even, really. Because if I think about, I have a huge photo studio in downtown Chicago with lots of people who are brilliantly trained at taking beautiful catalog shots. They may not be the same shots that I now need for social media, where someone can take it on their iPhone. And so you're always having to say, okay, I see where the world is going. I need to get there. So you should never lose sight of that. You have to hold on to that. And then you have to decide, what are the steps in which I'm going to get there? And I think what we've tried to do is, you can't go so test and learn into it. You have to keep iterating, but there are points where you have to leap. You have to say, you know what, I won't be able to measure the return on store events as well as I can measure the next incremental catalog in the mail. But there are occasions where you have to take some of those leaps and then measure the hell out of it afterwards and say, you know, is it working, is it not working? Don't pivot too quickly, but, you know, keep going back and asking yourself that question. Because without that, you really will only ever move forward incrementally.
You have restaurants in how many stores now?
Only one. I just opened one 2 months ago.
And it's called?
The Table at Crate.
Table at Crate. The Table at Crate. And what are your expansion plans there?
Yeah, I mean, I had no idea about running a restaurant, and I've discovered that it's really hard compared to even running retail stores. I had this idea it was going to be this beautiful brand vision, and it is, but then I learned that you have to have a certain number of tables and a certain number of sittings and a certain amount of alcohol sales, and now I know that. And the great thing is it was a win right out the gate, so it's profitable in its second month, and so I wasn't really expecting that. I thought it was going to be more of a test and learn scenario. So now that we have a success, we'll probably roll it out to the top 10 or 15 stores where we have the space.
Fantastic. A new dining choice. Neela Montgomery, thank you very much. It's wonderful to learn a little bit more about Crate and Barrel, and good luck.
Thank you.